Hello, learners. Hope you are keeping well. Today, we're actually going to look at settlement geography again, and we're going to focus on and let me move my head a little bit, on the urban settlement issues, and we're going to focus on urbanization. Okay? Quite an interesting section, also, and quite easy to understand. So let's first of all look at it. And I know I'm going to do this on various lessons. Remember, urban settlement issues is broken up into three here, but it's one section that could be interrelated. So it's urbanization, informal settlements, and injustices. So in this lesson, we're actually going to focus on the urban settlement issues. That's all we're going to do here so that it makes your lessons a little shorter. Okay. And of course, we're going to do a past paper. So let's get going, learners, and let's look at what we need to focus on in this lesson. Of course, we look at recent urbanization patterns in South Africa. And we already know urbanization is the increase in the percentage of people living in urban areas. All right, that's what we studied earlier in settlement geography. Then we're going to look at urban issues related to rapid urbanization, meaning urbanization that's increasing at a very fast rate. What urban issues or problems we will experience? So what we're looking at is the inner city problems that's happening more in the inner part of the city, around the CBD, transition zone, etc. All right, what is happening there? That's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on urban blight, traffic congestion, lack of planning, overcrowding, housing shortages, and service provision. Obviously, we'll do a little question at the end. That's the best way to do things. Okay, so let's look at our first slide. The first one is looking at urbanization again and the trend in RSA. Okay, now if we look at this trend, okay, we will notice again urbanization is the increase in the percentage of people living in urban areas. And if you look at this graph from 2008 to 2018, and you look at the bars tend to increase and we work with the percentages, okay, it's increasing quite rapidly. So we're having a rapid increase in urbanization in South Africa from 61% in 2008 to 66.3% in 2018. And that's over a short period of time of 10 years. We've had quite an increase of over 5%. Okay, so let's look at some characteristics. So the urbanization trend, and I don't know why my uh, antivirus is coming up. I think it also wants to be part of the show. Okay, so let's look at this. We're experiencing rapid urbanization, okay, in South Africa. And the big factors of this is rural urban migration, all right? That's a huge factor of people moving from rural areas to urban areas. And also international migration coming from other countries, especially the African countries or our African neighbors. We're getting a lot. Of course, this is an approximate figure. Okay. And when you come to exams, they may give you a different figure. It doesn't really matter. You use the figure that you get. It's pegged at around 62% of South Africa is urbanized. And of course, it continues to increase. So urbanization is happening. It's a reality in our country. We see it from all the informal settlements, etc., that are popping up in our urban areas. All right. So again, the reasons are rural urban migration. Of course, we have to include population growth, more babies, etc. Okay, so more populations are increasing. Immigration, that's happening as we indicated. Now we need to know that this urbanization is one of the main causes of inner city problems. One of the main causes. Okay? Right. Let's look at then the inner city problems that we have. Right. First of all, inner city problems is due to rapid urbanization, as I mentioned, especially in the inner city, experiences great pressure to try and cope with this increase. Therefore, you have your inner city problems. You must remember things can't be built overnight. You can't just have roads being built overnight to cater for an increase in the percentage of the population. Houses cannot be built overnight. Services cannot be provided overnight. So it creates a huge problem when this increase is quite rapid. So let's look at the first scenario, which is your urban blight. Okay? Now look at what urban blight means. Urban blight, it refers to a city or part of a city that is in a dilapidated state. That's urban blight. We look at this flats to let. It's in a dilapidated state. It's not an informal settlement. You must remember, it's just dilapidated. It was a formal structure. Now it's just broken down, sometimes used, sometimes not used. You understand? So if you look at this, and if you look at this also, dilapidated, that is urban blight. So part of a city or whole chunk of a city can be in dilapidated state. All right. Let's look at other issues related to this urban blight. Now, one of the things why we have urban blight is low owner occupation ratio. Now let's look at that. Why low owner occupation ratio? You may find urban blight happens in the transition zone around the CBD. So the owner says, whoa, I'm not going to bother to do up the building. Sooner or later, the CBD is going to grow. And if it grows, I'll get a huge amount of money for my land. So I'll leave the buildings like that. I'll offer it to rent to people that are moving into the urban areas. They are poor, they're desperate, they'll use the building. You understand? And it may be also overcrowded. Those people then say, well, why must we do the building up? You understand? It's not ours. So it stays in this. And we also must remember it was part of a fully functional urban area. It was a formal structure. And all of a sudden, due to various reasons, you understand, like low owner occupation ratio, lack of significance of the area, this now has become dilapidated. Now, learners, before I go on, I'm going to sound like, before we should say broken record, I'm going to sound like a broken CD. Because I'm going to repeat, when it comes to strategies, there's going to be overlaps for many of this. So, new ones I will explain. The other ones I'll just refer to as we go through the urban issues. Okay, so strategies to counteract urban blight. There are many. I've got a few here that are significant. Urban renewal. You've done this concept before, redoing of the urban area, improvement, uplifting the buildings. Remember various ways of gentrification that you've done in the earlier section, facadism, you understand, invasion, succession, renew the urban areas, all right? Build and do up the buildings, change the function from residential to commercial. You understand? So businesses can be there. Okay, that will take away this actual urban blight, encourage investments, make the place suitable, build it up. You understand? Offer cheaper rentals, encourage business people to come in. Okay, therefore you will uplift the area. All right. Another thing is development of green areas, which incorporates your vegetation areas, okay, your parks, etc., and your open spaces, which will create a more aesthetic appeal. You understand? Not just having building after building and all these dilapidated buildings. You remove some of them, some for business, some for the green areas, and you increase employment opportunities. Now you may say, how does this work? Because if you increase employment opportunities, you promote economic growth. Okay, more businesses will pop up, more people will be employed, better conditions of the buildings. You understand? All these things will happen. Okay, so these are some of the strategies to counteract urban blight. Let's look at another one, traffic congestion. Learners, please do not, if they ask you what you see in these pictures and you say traffic, it will be marked wrong. Please write the full word traffic congestion. Another important point, look at this. Many people we notice when we analyze exam papers is that learners tend to write, there's a lot of traffic. Please, that is not the correct one. And I know some sources indicate it like that. Please, you must note, if you do not write the correct definition, it will not be marked correct. So there could be a lot of traffic, but if there's 20 lanes, there may not be traffic congestion. So what is it? When transport networks cannot cope effectively with the increase in traffic, then we have congestion. We could have 10 lanes, you understand, and have congestion because there's too many vehicles can't cope. We can have 2 lanes, but no congestion because there's not many cars using it. You understand? So we need to watch for that, learners, please. Otherwise, you lose some marks that you can get very, very easily. So traffic congestion factors due to increase in urbanization, more people results in an increase in vehicles. And therefore, transport networks cannot cope effectively with the increase. You cannot build it overnight. All right. Obviously, there'll be special times when we will have more of a traffic congestion during peak hours, morning going to work, afternoon coming from work. Okay, these seems to be your major times, but doesn't mean you can't get congestion during other parts of the day. Okay, some strategies. Okay, I know you've done these before. Staggered time or flexi time when people's different things. Maybe the commerce starts at 8 o'clock. You understand the light industry at 9 o'clock, so that all people don't travel at the same time. Introduce other forms of transport. You understand? Allow for cycling lanes. Okay, your tuk-tuks, whatever. Other forms of transport that could be introduced. Your improvement in your railway lines. You understand that allow movement of people. Okay, which is happening now where we're getting these speed railway lines moving around. Okay, so improve all those and create other forms like cycling. Lanes dedicated to public transport. You'll have a special lane for public transport, like the Ria Vaya has, where your buses can move only in that lane and it's quite quick. You'll encourage people to use the buses. Decentralize offices, industries, and shops. So if you decentralize certain things like your famous what Foschini and Edgar's and whatever, they are not only found around the CBD or the inner city, they are found on the outskirts in the malls. Not everybody has to report to the CBD Foschini. I'll just use that as an example. They can then go and visit those areas. Park and ride facilities, where you have a parking area and you park your vehicle there. And then I know some places like Durban, okay, Tigwini, they actually they used to sell you a ticket. I don't know if it still happens now. And that one ticket will allow you to take buses at different points in the city, okay, or smaller sort of vehicles. And you can travel around, do your shopping, go back to your vehicle later so that there's less traffic. Outer ring roads or bypasses, there's your city here, okay, or your CBD. And instead of the road just going here, you have a road going around and move around. And there'll be outlets like our Johannesburg CBD. So you can travel here. If you want to go into the CBD on that side, you just use that route and go in. Or if you're not visiting, you go around. Okay. And that will cut down your traffic congestion also. More efficient transport systems, like the Gautrain that has improved the speed and the rear via. Quicker. It takes people faster and must have more efficient. In fact, your buses should be on time, better quality buses. Okay, so that it moves around better. Okay, uh, quicker, more buses, one-way streets. Of course, this is debatable, but sometimes you have one-way streets going in one direction, all the traffic flows in that way. There's no traffic going both ways. And then you have another one on that side, which to a certain extent does allow for traffic flow. I know some people debate it that it can cause congestion. Underground transport, subways, all right, because the lanes are jammed on the top. What about building subways where vehicles can go underground in heavy traffic areas so that they go underground and they come out in an area where there's less traffic? Subsidize costs of public transport, because we must encourage more people to go with public transport. One bus can hold 60 people. So we subsidize, make it cheaper. Besides making it better quality, make it cheaper, which will encourage people to use that. Also encourage lift clubs. So we've done quite a thing on traffic congestion. Lift clubs is where uh, one person's car for this week, five people travel together. All right. Or if it's an SUV like your dad's car, who's my car, you can only put three people, so small. Okay, but the bigger cars, maybe more people travel together, so you cut down with less vehicles on the road. Okay, let's go on. The next issue is lack of planning. What does this mean? Please, learners, I know some of the resources don't tell you. You need to know the concept also. Okay, so lack of planning, when the city does not plan effectively to cater for the needs of its people. Okay, not these people, of its people. All right, can't cater for it effectively. Look at what's happening here. Can you see? Shacks are just developing. There's the city down here. Look at this. It's just growing and growing. Obviously, you can see down here that there won't be enough electricity supply. It's just crammed. So it's a lack of planning. Okay, let's go further. What happens here? Some of the issues. Many people are moving into cities. Therefore, city cannot plan effectively to cater for people's needs. Okay, it's too fast, it's happening. So you can't even plan properly. Okay, lack of implementation or no laws to control where people can build or what they can do. And if you don't have those laws, that is definite lack of planning. Therefore, people will just build anything, anywhere, commercial, residential, industrial, all mixed together and creating a lot of problems, congestion, etc. in one area. Okay, that is a problem if it's lack of planning. This leads to unhindered growth or urban sprawl, formless expansion of the city in every direction. You've seen it in the pictures I've showed you. Those informal sectors are just growing in every direction. All right. And what happens then? People will just build shelters wherever possible if there's no laws and unhindered growth is allowed. You'll see today there's three or four shacks in an informal settlement there, and suddenly tomorrow is 100. It's not, people are desperate. They need places to live. And if they're allowed with no proper management and things like that, it's going to happen. Of course, this uncontrolled and basic services become difficult to provide. These are issues that happen. You can't supply piped water, electricity, housing can't just be supplied. So strategies, and some of them will overlap, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I'll be repeating myself, learners. And I know your data is getting overused at the moment. So first of all, implementation of proper laws. It's off, not or to control what and where people build. Have laws. You can't do this here. You can't do that there. You have to in order to plan properly. You're not depriving people and saying they can't. Sorry, you must get out or whatever. But you need to plan. Encourage decentralization of functions and people. Allow people build out of the city. Take functions out. Allow for their people will move to those areas. You understand? So you won't have this massive congestion where you can't plan properly. Develop green areas, which incorporates vegetation areas, parks, and open spaces. Now, I know this is a repeat. How come? What's this about planning? We do need in our planning green areas for aesthetic appeal, as buffer zones, etc. So it's part of our planning. We need to have proper laws to put that in place. Increase employment opportunities. Again, we mentioned this. Promoting economic growth. If people are working and more businesses, then we're not going to have so much growing of the city of informal sectors and stress on how we're going to pay for all these basic services. People will, you can start it off and people will pay for the consumption because now they have employed. Okay. Uh, Increasing employment opportunities also by creating the economic growth will also reduce informal settlements and of course inform urban sprawl because people can afford proper housing. Okay, let's go on. Overcrowding. All right, now again here we need to watch out for this definition, learners. Right, we see here overcrowding, we see here overcrowding, and sometimes people define it as there's too many people. All right, no, 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 no. Many parts of places like Japan have a lot of people, but they're not overcrowded. All right, so what is overcrowding? When there are more people allocated within a given space that is considered tolerable, okay, uh, from that, from a safety and health perspective. Uh, Given space then is considered tolerable from a safety and health perspective. So they live in the space, but that safety and health perspective, it's not effective. You understand? People are living unhealthy lives. Safety is compromised. That is overcrowding. So if we look at this, you understand? All right. And we look at this, people are crowded on a train, etc. Okay, we can see things are not safe if we look at this one. Okay, because the density may be high, but you can see the conditions. People are sharing things, etc. So it's not safe and it's not healthy in these sort of areas. That's what makes overcrowding. A given space, or located in a given space, then is considered tolerable from a safety and healthy perspective. Okay, or you can say they're living in a space which is not considered tolerable from a safety and health perspective. Okay, right, let's go on. Let's look at overcrowding. What's some of the things that happen here? People moving from moving to urban areas are generally poor. Okay, they can't afford many of these things, even normal electricity, etc. Because lots of it rural urban migration, so they are poor. Okay, so they're going to look at areas with low rentals. All right. And also, families are living in small rooms, shacks, even a few families to share the rent. All right. Which will result in overcrowding, not just based on the number, but the fact is this, it's not a healthy situation. Imagine having few families in two rooms. It's not healthy, it's dangerous. Okay? That's overcrowding. Creates a huge pressure on basic services and facilities. Example, just schools is an issue. But what about the basic things like pipe water, electricity, etc.? There's huge pressures. All right. Again, you'll see strategies to counteract employment opportunities, and you know already, which promote economic growth. All right. And if people earn money, they can afford better housing, better health conditions. So I don't keep, I know I'm repeating myself, but you know that's the case. Encourage decentralization of functions and people, because if functions decentralize, people will move with it, not because they just want to buy there, but there'll be employment opportunities in that area. Okay, so it will cut down on the overcrowding, green areas, Again, we're using this like parks. And we know why? Because green areas will cut down on the density of buildings, etc. Okay, cutting down overcrowding, providing housing and basic services to the population. Obviously, that is a must. Okay, your low cost housing, your basic services, which will then allow people to live in homes. All right, therefore, cutting down on the overcrowding, encouraging decentralization. I think I've mentioned that. I'm overdoing it now, but I mentioned this in this. So I'm start to overdoing this. And maybe I love that concept so much. Okay. So you can neglect the last part. Okay. Now, housing shortages. Okay. Uh, you may say, but what's overcrowding? What's housing shortages? Yes, there'll be housing shortages. And yes, housing shortages can result in overcrowding. But we also have to deal with housing shortages as a separate concept. And let's look at it here. What's the difference here? It says when there is insufficient housing to accommodate population in an area. Can you see it? Some learners or some people say housing shortages, overcrowding, same thing. No, it's not. Housing shortages, when there's not enough houses, can lead to overcrowding. Okay, have you got that? Then there's not enough houses to accommodate the population in an area. All right, you can see it here. Okay, and this is the result of it. Not enough people, so you can get overcrowding of these flats, etc. All right, let's go on. You look here, some of the strategies, and I know I'm putting some pictures on this. Okay, where they build the low cost housing, it's cheaper for people, they subsidize, and therefore people can afford to live in this. All right, look at here, these low cost flats. Okay, so what happens is one little piece of land here, but so many houses being built. So obviously, what's going to happen? The cost will be lower for people living in each of these flats. Okay, because less land is used. Okay, so these are some of the solutions for housing shortages. So let's do our summary on this. Again, growing urban population creates housing shortages, we know. It results in informal settlements, urban blight, urban sprawl, and obviously we can include the concept of overcrowding. Okay, these things have happened. And strategies here, the Reconstruction and Development Housing Project regarding low cost housing has helped, but due to massive increase, it's not as effective. You still find people. So government has been doing things. They have put in, and they have put in more than 3 million of these urban dwellings have been put up in South Africa. But it's increasing at such a rate that this also is helping to a certain extent, but is not fully sorting out the problem. Another form, as we said, housing built to sort this large population are flats. So more people living on the same piece of the land, they're just building vertically. Then increase in employment opportunities will promote economic growth again, and people can afford to build their own houses. Okay, let's go to the next one, service provision. This now, the definition is the ability of an area to provide services to all people in that area. That's service provision. All right, efficient. Poor service provision, they don't have the ability to provide services for all people. And this becomes an issue. I just feel this picture to me is very sad as an educator. You look at these little ones crossing the river, all right, and there's sewer around here because lack of proper service delivery in terms of sanitation, but they are dedicated in terms of going to the school. What poor conditions for these young people. Here you can notice there's one tap, all right. I don't know whether it's a full tap or it's just a pipe, and all these people have to use that. So service provision is not good here. It's poor. There's no ability to give everything to everyone. All right. Okay. And service provision results in protest, lack of service provision, massive protests. And we find this tires, etc., burning on streets when people had enough and they worried that they're not being given this thing. They are frustrated. It results in protests. Okay. Let's look at this then quickly. All right. Due to rapid urbanization again and unplanned settlements, made it difficult to provide services to all people. Okay. Because they're happening too fast. It can't be supplied. Okay. We have an increasing demand for services and infrastructure. All right. It's the greatest in informal settlements because they don't have so many services. And also the transition zone, which is dilapidated and the services are not working. And here the poverty is also the greatest problem. So it's compounded. Lack of service provision, poverty, they can't supply themselves with it. Okay. The basic services will include various things: housing, health, education, sanitation, clean or piped water, electricity. These are the basic services that we focus on that people are not getting. So we're not asking for something elaborate, but we're talking about the basic services. All right. These basic services, because they are required for human well being. All right. Very important. Then we look at other ones like infrastructure, which includes roads, power lines, communication networks, are also service that should be provided to the people. All right. And why do we need this infrastructure? It's access to the services and functions offered by the city. All right. It allows us to move around, etc. Obviously, if these things are not provided, we find that there are many protests, all right, that happen. Government, on the other hand, has increased the provision of services, but definitely more needs to be done, all right? And of course, it's compounded by the increase in people or urbanization process. We say proper planning as a strategy, budgeting to accommodate for the provision of basic services, example, your water and sanitation. So we need proper planning. We need to look at what is really needed, which services are needed more, which services are priority, and we need to budget and allocate money appropriately. Mismanagement of funds, etc., is a huge problem. Okay, and therefore we can do more than what we're doing at the moment if everything is planned and budgeted properly. Again, increase in employment opportunities, which will promote economic growth. And if people are working and earning money, they will be able to provide services for themselves. Encouraging decentralization of functions and people. So the services that exist in one area is not exhausted. All right. Other areas will also be able to supply. As people move out, there'll be less. Okay. So let's look at the questions. All right. This time I chose a case study. And when you read the case study, again, read through the whole thing and highlight. Now let's look at it. What does it deal with? Examiner tip again. It's a DBE past paper. Urban blight. You know it's dilapidated buildings found in the inner city. Okay, in the transition zone, etc. So you know already, you can picture it in your head. Now let's look what the heading says. Urban renewal program to fight urban blight angers Woodstock residents. So what are we seeing here already? A picture. People want to do urban renewal. They want to do up the buildings, maybe change the functions from residential to business. All right. Invasion and succession, facadism, do up historic buildings on the inside. Okay, various things we want to do. Okay, but from this, we realize that the residents of the area are not happy. So, from the statement itself, we build something. So, let's read the article. The deadline of Bromwell Street residents, we know it's in Cape Town, to leave their homes has been extended So they were supposed to leave their homes. Now they extended it to a later date. One of the residents says, okay, renewal or urban renewal programs are destroying their lives in Woodstock. So one of the residents is not happy. He says they're destroying their lives. Maybe he's representing all. All right, the Woodstock hub gained possession of 120 to 128 Brom Street in 2013 to upgrade the buildings. So this hub that's going to be there from 120 to 128 allow them to upgrade the buildings. All right. Director of Woodstock Hub says these properties were supposed to be vacated. 3 years later, residents say they have nowhere to go. So it's supposed to be vacated some time ago, but residents now, 3 years have gone and say they got nowhere to go and blame urban renewal project and government and their predicament. And they blame them. So they seem to be saying, why are you moving us out? Okay, the Western Cape MEC for Human Settlement says he has offered families housing in Delft, seems another area, but they didn't want to take it. Residents say they don't want to be forced to move far out of the city, right, community that they are not familiar with. They want to stay where they are, possibly also employment, etc. Okay, so can you see how much we picked up from this? And a lot of it is just going to help us in our questions, learners. All right, let's look at it. What does the term urban blight mean? You know already. All right. Buildings are dilapidated, run down in the city. Can you see it? There's a definition. Remember the word concept. So you don't have to learn the definition word for word, as long as you put it in words that are meaningful and correct. Okay, you can change the words. Okay, so we know that one. It's simple. Next one. What is state one cause of urban blight? Now, this is a general question. Any cause, all right? Any cause you can put down. You don't have to look at the source, all right? You say landlords do not maintain buildings, all right? Overcrowding of properties, you've learned that already. Future zone of expansion of the CBD. So the landlords don't want to do the land because they know they're going to get a good price for it later. Intention to change original function of building. Sooner or later, it's going to turn into a business place. So why do the residential area up? He's going to get more money. Of course, another one is illegal occupation of buildings, where people occupy the buildings illegally. Therefore, they're not even worried. They use the buildings and they can't even set up anything there in case they get caught and removed. All right, subletting, where somebody rents and then they let it out to other people, and suddenly there's 5 families or 10 families living in one flat. It's definitely going to cause that. And poor service delivery in terms of electricity, piped water, and people have to use various systems. Sanitation is poor, which will also cause dilapidation of buildings. Okay, let's look further. Why have inhabitants of Bromwell Street not vacated their homes yet? And these things, you can get some of the answers from the article. Look at the first one. The deadline was extended straight from the article for 2 marks. Can you see? Answers come from articles. They had nowhere to go or no alternate accommodation. And that's also from the article, learners. Can you see that? Also from the article. They did not want to move elsewhere because of the community living. Also from the article. Sentimental value attached to house community or familiar with community, again from the article. Can you see what we highlighted? So lots of stuff from the article. All right, look at this one. Cannot afford to move elsewhere, no money to relocate. All right, That's an assumption. I would say go with this first, which is more definite. And these are extra additional answers which are correct. May not, the article may not give it totally, but they're correct. They don't want to be moved far from their place of work. This is also a reality, all right, that people don't want to move. So maybe these last two answers are not part of your uh, article, but you can put them in. But I always say go for the most definite answers first. Look at the next question. Why do residents feel that urban renewal of the Woodstock hub is destroying their lives? There's overlaps here because now residents are forced to move out of the buildings. So it's destroying their life. They were happy there. Right? So residents are forced to settle in new communities they're not familiar with. And of course, that will be like a destruction of their social life. Residents' level to access to amenities in the CBD is reduced. Can you see? They were used to buying things or do things in the CBD. Now they're far away from it. Residents will incur increased costs due to movement. Now, if they need certain things to buy certain things or do certain things, they're far away, so they cost more travel. It may be more expensive. All right. They will be settled far distances out of the city, okay, which they were used to, where the facilities were. Disruption of social networks, okay, where they knew the people. Now people will move away from one another. So the heritage, sentimental buildings that they were used to, you lived in a house so many years, you don't want to leave it. All right. Lack of consultation, excluded from decision making. That's also, no one considered their feelings, what they want. And if those people made those decisions excluding the people's consultation, it can definitely affect their lives negatively. Okay, let's go on. Give two reasons for why the transition zone requires urban renewal. And this is generally opened. All right, you know all these answers, learners. All right, I know it's a long memo here, but I'm going to go through a few to show you. All right, I know I'm worried about your data, so I don't want to make it too long, but I'm going to show you a few here. All right, why do we need urban renewal? Why do we need to do these buildings up? Because in the transition zone, it's urban blight, the buildings are dilapidated. You can't leave it like that. Also, with dilapidated buildings not being done, it can be a health and safety hazard. Okay, urban decay is highest in the transition zone. The most dilapidated buildings are there. All right, it needs to be done to prevent urban decline and spill over to the CBD. At one stage, at Johannesburg CBD, the transition zone was growing into the CBD instead of the CBD growing into the transition zone. All right, to prevent vandalism and graffiti. All right, those are other issues, maybe not as relevant but important. All right, okay, and if you look at residential buildings, example, flats, transition zone may be occupied by illegally, all right? And it could result in certain issues. Not that all illegal occupants do things like this, but it allows opening for crime, etc. And I could go through this long list, learners, but you'll notice that all these things are things that are happening at the moment. You understand? Okay, so I'm saving your data, all right, to shorten that a bit. Okay, let's go to the next one. Explain why urban renewal will change Bromwell Street from low to middle or a high income area. So, what is the question? Look again at the action words. Urban renewal, making it look better, doing up the building. Why will it change it from a low income area of poor people living in this area to a high or middle income area? Okay, because now if you build the buildings and make them better, higher income area can afford to stay there. Poorer people can't afford the rent, unfortunately. All right. It excludes a lower income because of affordability. Area will now have a higher status and prestige, with all these new buildings, etc., the status of the area will build up. Businesses will want to come there. Richer people will want to live there. So the value of the property will increase, definitely encouraging investors, etc. All right. Also, now because the value goes costly to buy or rent, so only the richer people or the middle income people can buy there. The upkeep of property will increase. Again, poorer people can't afford it. Continuous gentrification will take place, doing up the buildings. So, therefore, the value will keep on going up and up and up. High levels of security and safety, all right, will now come in. You know, the security companies, they're always waiting to protect your property. So, what's going to happen? With all that happening, you live in this flat, it's got this, it's got a security guard, it's got locked up parking areas. Therefore, it'll become more expensive and can only richer people or higher income people can afford it. Can you see these questions, learners? If you look at you take the content you studied, take in the reality of the situation around you. And geography, again, is interesting. It's reality orientated. It's just knowing your concepts, applying it, and you can get top marks. All the best, learners. Till our next lesson.